of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, House passes new rules package. Almost guaranteeing gridlock. Sorry, couldn't read my writing. Meanwhile, Republicans then moved to defund the IRS. That legislation, of course, will die as soon as it hits the Senate, but it gives you a notion of what's to come. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's lawyers found classified documents at his think tank, then notified the government on the same day, then returned them. Now the media will blow the story. Biden's student loan repayment plan, that's not the debt relief, has been announced. Not only is that debt relief plan at the Supreme Court, today the Supreme Court hears Glacier Northwest versus the Teamsters, case which could severely undercut the power of labor actions. Meanwhile, Lena Khan and the FTC investigating Coke and Pepsi for price discrimination, which could have far broader implications by reviving an old law. New York City nurses strike day 2. UN report the ozone layer is on track to be restored as chlorofluorocarbon emissions dropped abruptly. Rains continue to pound Southern California. At least 15 people have died. Extreme weather out there. Brazilian authorities detain 1,500 insurrectionist rioters. Israel's national security minister has now outlawed public display of Palestinian flags in a broad celebration of democracy. And lastly, Diamond of Diamond and Silk fame has died. Silk denies it was COVID. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is Tuesday. We have Emma is back tomorrow. We have some announcement. In fact, Nug Wrangler, I can always forget how to pronounce Nug Wrangler was first into the IMs today with the following message, which reminds me to announce the new update to the app on Android is POG. And if it is anything like the...
How'd you spell that?
P-O-G.
Okay.
POG.
Cool. Okay.
What do I say?
No, that's good. That's good.
P-O-G?
Yeah. I've just never said... I've heard poggers. I've just never heard...
It's POG.
Okay, cool. I'm not up with it either, I guess.
Fruited Dinosaur says, new Android app is great. Everyone should manually go to the Google Play Store and update it if their phone didn't do it automatically. Only note I'd make, it would be nice to watch the video feed through the app instead of having YouTube Twitch open separately when IMing through the app. I mean, come on. Come on. Talk about looking a gift horse in the mouth. It's a free app, for God's sakes. But it is, if the Android app is anything like the iOS app, you're going to love it. So you can head to you can head up to majorityapp.com and get those apps. The links are there. And I will also say Kyle is a total genius. This app is going to work on like 15,000 different like Android supported devices. Android is a very hard platform to build app for because you have so many. They don't have with iOS things become obsolete. So it gives you sort of parameters if you're coding what you need to code for. And there's only one piece of hardware, essentially. And so Android apps can be much trickier. But check it out. Kyle is a genius. So thanks to Kyle and enjoy the app. People got to slow down on the IMs. They get a little bit excited about the app and trying to play around with it too much. And I don't go for that. Got a lot to get to today. We will talk about Diamond and Silk, or Silk, I guess now, and but that's going to have to wait until a lot later. This is exciting. And particularly for those in California, we do not know for sure whether Dianne Feinstein is going to retire in 2024, because after all, she'll only be, like 106? Do we know how old she'll be?
Does she know?
In 2024?
Yeah.
She'll be 91.
91. Now, look, I have had a great uncle who lived to 104. My grandmother lived to 101. My father's getting up there. My mother's getting up there. And there is no doubt in my mind that, and my uncle, my great uncle, he went into work until his mid-90s as a lawyer. Now, he wasn't taking a full caseload. But, and he'd show up. He'd have a desk. He had a couple of clients. Dianne Feinstein reportedly has no idea where she is half the time. That's not me talking. I obviously have no contact with her whatsoever. I've never had contact with her. And so it's time for her to go about 2 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, frankly. But it's clear that she's going to serve out her term for whatever reason. And maybe she'll run again, which is why I like this announcement and the way that it was framed. Katie Porter has announced that she's going to be running for this seat with the presumption that it's going to be vacated by Dianne Feinstein, which is hopefully going to be helpful in those people around Dianne Feinstein getting her out of that seat. But here's Katie Porter's announcement. I couldn't hope for a better senator than I think Katie Porter would be.
We're living through a time of extraordinary change. I'm Katie Porter. Change can be electrifying and exhilarating, but change can also be disruptive, like the constant assault on our democracy and the dangerous imbalance in our economy. The threat from so-called leaders like Mitch McConnell has too often made the United States Senate the place where rights get revoked, special interests get rewarded, and our democracy gets rigged. Especially in times like these, California needs a warrior in Washington. And that's exactly why I'm announcing my candidacy for the United States Senate in 2024. I don't do Congress the way others often do. I use whatever power I have to speak hard truths to the powers that be, to not just challenge the status quo, but call it out, name names, and demand justice. That goes for taking on Wall Street and the big banks, big oil, and big pharma. It's why I refuse to accept corporate PAC and lobbyist campaign money. I don't want it. And I'm leading the fight to ban congressional stock trading because it's just wrong. To win these fights, it's time for new leadership in the U.S. Senate. If you agree, please go to katieporter.com.
Yeah, I mean, is there more to that or no? That's it. No, that's good. So this is great news. And by announcing this early, she hopefully will scare people out. I imagine if she gets a lot of donations If they have an announcement over the next 24, 48 hours that X number of dollars have come in, that's going to scare people out of the race. I mean, that's what this is meant to do. It is meant to show that she's got the strength, that she's going to be very tough to beat, trying to make herself the presumptive, heir, if you will, to that seat, all of which I would have a lot of problems with if I didn't like Katie Porter, but I do. And that's what politics is, right? Like, and certainly anybody entering the race to her right should not be welcome. Exactly. And frankly, like, I just don't know that you're going to find anybody to her left that is going to have the opportunity to win across that state. She has proven that she can win in a district that was, when she started, running, well, it was reddish actually. And now I would say probably more arguably purple, like all of California.
And her race, even this past cycle, was very close, and she fought it out. So she's unseated. She unseated a Republican to win her seat, and then has held it. So I think it's and frankly, like, in terms of just being a proven commodity in the way that she approaches being a lawmaker, and in terms of providing oversight, it's not inconceivable you could do better, but I would want more evidence than somebody who is, I don't know, I'm just speaking of conjecture, sat on a city council or was a county supervisor or something like that. And frankly, this is what we should have in New York too. We should have 2 senators like Katie Porter from California, and we should have 2 like this from New York, where when you're in a blue state and a Democrat is going to win this Senate seat, they should be as far to the left as possibly sustainable by the state. Bottom line, we need blue states to send the most progressive Democrats possible to the Senate and to the House. We just need that for the sake of the country, but also in terms of progressive politics. It would be maximizing the model of, like, not just the squad, but just, like, for example, people like, like Chuy Garcia in Illinois, like people who have, like, deep, some of the most blue districts in the country being also the most far to the left members of Congress there are. Yeah.
And I mean, and that's why, you would see, like, the Justice Democrats had their strategy was to win in primaries, right? That where there's no chance of them being a spoiler, and the amount of money that you need for a primary is much less than it would be a general election, and where, winning the primary is essentially winning the general election. That's been the strategy. Much harder to do on a Senate level, right, but still very important. And we're getting there. We're getting there. It's slow, but the Senate is moving to the left. I mean, it just simply is as a fact. It's taken 20 years, but it's happening. We'll get into some of these Republican votes in a moment. Also, look at the nurses' strike. I also want to talk about the this FTC investigation of Coke and Pepsi, and this case that's going to be at the Supreme Court. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. But first, a couple of words from our sponsors. I kid you not. I did not know I was going to be promoting this today. I have the honey because Manicura is advertising with us. But I tried it, Manicura. I tried it last night. I had tried it before, but last night I did a taste test. Like, I don't eat a lot of honey. I eat a decent amount of honey. When I was living up full-time upstate, I had a bunch of friends who were making honey. And so I would local honey. I've had wildflower honey. I've had clover honey. I've had raw honey and processed honey. I've had crystallized honey, which is basically raw honey. And a little trick, you can boil it. I have never had honey like this before, and it really is
it is amazing. This is honey that comes from New Zealand. And it is bees that feed on the nectar of the Manuka tree, or the Manuka tree, I guess it is. And it honestly is like a honey that I have never tasted anything like this. It is on top of the taste, it has unique antioxidants. It has prebiotics, like a lot of honeys, although apparently Manukora honey has even more of this compound, MGO, which is antibacterial. It only comes from the nectar of this tea tree. It contains nutrients that support optimal immune and digestive health, but the taste of this honey it's crazy. It's like almost like caramel, and it's not too sweet. It is really rich. It's almost like has the consistency of caramel. I just did the taste test on spoons last night, but put it in your tea, put it on your ice cream. It really is amazing. It's the best tasting honey I have ever experienced. And I know that's a weird thing to say. But last night I was in my kitchen, I put Saul to bed, and I'm like, I'm going to just try some of this, and then started comparing it to we have, 2 or 3 other honeys that we've had for a long time. And it really is just significantly better. Manukora's Super Honey is available in a range of easy to use formats. They have squeeze bottles. They have compostable honey stick packs, so you can eat straight, put it in your kid's lunch, add it to your favorite food or beverage. If you head to mancura.com/majority, you'll get automatically a free pack of honey sticks with your order. That's a $15 value. That's mancura.com/majority to get a free pick of honey sticks with your order. It's called Honey with Superpowers for a good reason. Get on it. Try this delicious, creamy caramel honey. You will not look back with Manukora. It really is. It's nuts. Also, mentioned many times, for me, online security is huge. Keeping my identity safe is super important to me. I don't fall for phishing attacks ever, but people do all the time. And one thing that I cannot control, which happens to everybody, is that there are data leaks. And you use your email for some site that you can't even remember you signed up for. You use a password that you use traditionally. It gets leaked, and then you're screwed. Which is why I am excited to partner with today's sponsor, Aura. Aura is an easy-to-use app that includes everything you need to stay safe online. Aura protects you from scammers and hackers by scanning the so-called dark web. That's where, bad guys sell your stolen information. And it looks for your emails, it looks for your passwords, and it looks for your social security numbers. And if it finds anything, it alerts you fast. They help you fight back against those websites that make your personal information public by automatically requesting removal of your info. This helps reduce robocalls, also maintains operational security. Or it gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries. Like if somebody was opening a loan or a credit card in your name. I mentioned, it was a couple of months ago, I opened up a savings account for my daughter. She's actually doing fairly well with it. But as soon as I did that, within hours, after leaving the bank anyways, they must have run something, then I got pinged with somebody's opening up a bank account. Unfortunately, in this case, it was me. They got a VPN, allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and personal information safe and encrypted. And they protect your devices from viruses, malware, spyware, so that the bad guys can't break in. I don't know, like those hostage things. Aura even helps you manage what your kids can use on their devices. You can restrict specific apps. You can set screen time limits. You can set focus times so that kids can use one thing and not another. In other words, do your homework. Don't watch YouTube. And they have a passwords manager that lets you store and access your online passwords in a secure and convenient fashion. And you may have an app that does one of these things. Well, Aura does them all. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura is going to give you a 2-week free trial with my link. You're going to be shocked at how much your private information Aura finds exposed over those 2 weeks. Go to aura.com/majority. That's AURA.com/majority. Start your free trial. Also, link below in the description, in the podcast and the YouTube, and at majority.fm. All right, let's get to, well, first off, let's just see some footage. I don't know if there's anybody out there who is near some of the striking nurses. I know they're at Mount Sinai Hospital. Now, there are 2 Mount Sinai hospitals now. I was born at the one on the Upper East Side 56 some odd years ago. And now they ended up purchasing, or, merging, of course, with the Roosevelt, former Roosevelt Hospital. I don't know if they still call it the Roosevelt Hospital, but that's where both my kids were born, the Roosevelt Hospital. But if you're around, and then there's also, there were 2 hospitals, Mount Sinai and Montefiore, where they are striking. If you are around there in any way, go down there, give those folks support, have them call into the show. Tweet at Matt or Bradley and let them know that that's happening. 7,000 nurses in total. Montefiore's up in the Bronx. Nurses and management is scheduled to return to the bargaining table today. At Mount Sinai's main campus on 5th Avenue in Manhattan, no new talks are scheduled. That's according to union representatives. This is separate from the interviews that we did with some of the doctors at Montefiore, who are also talking about this. Contracts between the New York State Nursing Association and a dozen private city hospitals expired on the 31st of last year. 8 hospitals have come to tentative agreements or ratified them. 3 other hospitals are still talking, 2 of which are now having strikes. Mount Sinai and Montefiore. And nurses are seeking higher wages, but like we've seen in all these strikes, whether it was the nurses up in Worcester with one of the longest strikes in the history of Massachusetts, and nurses, maybe in the country, at St. Vincent's, or whether the nurses that were striking in I think it was in Minnesota, right? In Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is all of these hospitals and all of these sort of like holding companies, which essentially they are at this point, they are driving their profits by cutting back on employees and specifically on nurses. And that means you've got nurses who are working in like the emergency room trying to monitor 20 patients. It's just not possible. I mean, just contemplate this. You're a nurse, you're monitoring 20 patients in an emergency room. How many minutes can you spend with each patient? Like literally like it's 90 seconds. And then you're still not going to get back to them until like an hour has passed. It's just not, it doesn't work. And so like all of these strikes that we're seeing, nurses are out there in some instances trying to get more money, but largely what they're trying to do is get more nurses so they can provide better care. You don't go into nursing because you don't care about the care for patients. And that's what's going on here. And it's broadly a problem at all facilities across the country. And what you're going to see, they're going to start throwing huge cash at scabs because they're willing to put the money out there as long as they don't end up having to hire more nurses long term. This is the way they drive their profits. Here's some shots. This is what, from last night? Yeah. Okay. Shots of more nurses coming on strike. That's a lot of nurses. Well, so there's, I mean, I would love to see someone, some academic study why nurses and teachers, tend to be the sort of most, in many respects, broadly speaking, the most, I don't know how I want to say radical, but willing to perform labor actions. And I think part of it is because they, the whole concept of social justice unionism, because they're working directly with, I don't know, for lack of a better word, the clients. Like they're developing relationships.
It's one thing to let something go down the assembly line, like that's a bit defective, but whatever. But if you're letting patients go home with stuff inside of them,
or students,
right? Yeah.
I mean, that's basically it. And you're developing relationships with people outside of the people you're providing services directly to. And the nurses union in California is probably one of the most progressive unions in the country, without a doubt. But the nurses union, in most states are also similarly very energized. So if you can get out there and support the nurses, please do. And if you have an opportunity to have them call, let's do it.
Yeah, well, if you guys will recall, we had the doctors Noah Nassim and Libby Wetterer on November 30th of last year, who are third-year family medicine resident physicians at Montefiore and in the organizing committee for CIR, the Committees for Interns and Residents. And Sam, I think it was this interview that you said something along the lines of like they were talking about the staffing and the shifts that they pull, like sometimes pulling 24-hour shifts, and then sometimes if there is overtime needed because someone else is not there, they might be pulling over that to get overtime because there's no other people to accommodate that shift. And it just brings up the question, which I think you raised, which is like, is there any position, is there any job where we'd want people to have more like sleep?
Yeah,
more
I don't want the person.
care.
I don't want the. With all due respect, like I don't want the person. Greeting me at Walmart. Now I've slept for 36 hours. Forget about the person who's supposed to be making sure that I stay healthy and alive. My God, I mean,
it'd be one thing if like accidents at hospitals or whatever weren't a major cause of death. That we have hospital administrators, and it's the same story everywhere. It's these business school people that get installed at the head of these hospitals that start cutting corners.
Yep.
It's insane.
Yep.
The McKinseyfying of hospitals, basically.
Yep. Jackie C says years ago, venture capitalists, instead of professional hospital administrators and other staff, began buying up hospitals, nonprofits, and religious institutions. Bottom line became paramount: staff cutting, reduced salaries, policies that hurt care, morale plummeted, many quit. People who go into healthcare do so to help people. It's never been the same. Yeah, I mean, this is a dynamic we're seeing across all businesses, right? I mean, but when it comes to when it comes to these type of services, like healthcare, like teaching, you feel it more. I think it's more poignant and more problematic, frankly. Like, I don't think you should be allowed to do that. I don't think you should be allowed to own multiple hospitals. And this is like, again, this gets back to like antitrust type of stuff. Because the problem with the concentration of economic power is not just in terms of like what it does for wealth inequality, which it does. It's problematic. It is not just what it does to political inequality, which it does, and that should be inhibited as well. But it undercuts like the value of these institutions in our society. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure if I care. Well, I mean, there are problems even when you get something like, I don't know, like Walmart's, because of what it does to small businesses and what it does to sort of like people's freedom to not, and what it does to suppressing of wages when you have only one buyer for labor in a town because the Walmart's so big that it's gotten rid of the supermarket, it's gotten rid of the hardware store, it's gotten rid of the pharmacy, it's gotten rid of the sporting goods store, it's gotten rid of the automotive supply store, all those things. It suppresses wages. But particularly when it comes to things like hospitals, which are, we don't have an option. It's going to suck in your town if you have to drive, 60 miles to get to the, local O'Reilly's or ADAP. But it's far worse if you don't have a hospital. So, that's why, when you're talking about sort of first step, first order things, antitrust, in my mind, is hugely important, because whether it's just sort of a marginally better society or whether it's revolution that you're looking for, the first thing you need to do is to debilitate the power and the concentration of power in the hands of money and weaken it in some fashion. And one of the side benefits of that, although it also for some people may be the ends, is that you get better services for people and you get better wages for people. Let's talk about briefly about these, what's going on in the House. They passed a rules package. The hilarity of the whole thing is the holdouts were like, we're draining the swamp. We want to make this all transparent. We don't even know what deals McCarthy cut with these 20. There is some stuff that is obvious in the rules package that is out there. The Holman rule exists, which allows lawmakers to use spending bills to defund specific programs and fire federal officials or reduce their pay. Now, again, none of this is going to function as is, because they're going to have to pass all these bills through the Senate. But it's setting up stuff in the event that the Republicans retain the House and pick up the Senate next time. This is going to exist, and it is creating tools that are going to empower really the heart of the Republican Party. And presumably, Democrats get control of the House, they reverse these rules. But even still, with a guy like Hakeem Jeffries, what they can sometimes do is like, we're going to reverse 2/3 of it.
And keep what we like.
Yeah. It's just there. Because, who's going to be paying attention to this? Yeah. Nobody. It makes it harder for lawmakers to raise the debt limit, which is a fake thing more or less anyways. We should mint the goddamn platinum coin and get over with this. We're done. It creates a new select subcommittee under the Judiciary Committee focused on the weaponization of the federal government, which, again, I'm not sure if that is as church committee sounding as we hope it would be.
Wouldn't hold my breath.
I wouldn't hold your breath either. But there's hope. Hope springs eternal. Steve Scalise, David Duke without the baggage, he says, bills appear by dark of night. Bills that nobody's read are thousands of pages long. Today starts that process of fixing what's broken in Washington. The only problem is the full extent of the concessions that McCarthy has made, we don't know, because it was all done with a handshake in a back room. So that's all hidden. It will allow the party's right wing a critical block of seats on the panel that decides which bills can be considered on the House floor and which amendments may be offered. That, again, was done in a handshake deal, side deal that we don't know anything about. Here is Ilhan Omar responding to some of this. She is she's asked by the host on MSNBC, Richard Liu, about her thoughts about being kicked off of her committee assignments, like Kevin McCarthy has been going around saying that she will be. She thinks it would be pretty ridiculous if the only person who grew up in Africa was kicked off the African subcommittee of the Foreign Relations Committee, but wouldn't put it past him. But then goes on to start talking about some of these reforms.
Certainly was getting a lot of folks confronting him from both sides of the aisle during the entire process of 15 votes. One of those, hello, and maybe not hello, was with you. And there's that picture that you're so aware of at the moment. And he was talking with a lot of different representatives during those 15 votes. During this moment, what was he saying to you?
Well, I have to say that photo was a whole mood.
Yeah, it was.
We, certainly got the opportunity, I think, in those long 4 days to have conversations to get an insight on what some of the holdouts on the Republican side in regards to the speaker vote were thinking about the things that they were negotiating for and how ultimately the vote will shake out. And one of the conversations Matt and I had was about what it would take for him to actually cast a yes vote for McCarthy. And he said that wouldn't happen. And it certainly did not happen. So.
Was he saying that, did he give you a list of more things, or was he saying we had everything right now and we're just holding out? Was there any sort of specificity that you can share with us?
I mean, he certainly was going through the list of the things. Some obviously seemed like they were already on the table and negotiated for before we even got there. And he certainly didn't seem that there was more on a list that would actually get him to vote yes. And we certainly discussed some of the things on the list that, that we can be excited about. And so we'll see if that rules package comes to fruition and what that would mean for those of us in the minority. Obviously, cuts to the Pentagon budget is pretty exciting for folks like me who are putting up amendments to do so. I also think the church-style committee that they are thinking about to look into if there has been any violations of First Amendment rights of Americans by the FBI and others also interests me. So we'll see what ends up happening and if Republicans are able to actually be able to get anything done. If the last 4 days is a testament of what we are to see, it's probably going to be more chaos.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, is that it would be great to have a real examination of all elements of our national security state, without a doubt. And I would love to see $75 billion, $150 billion, $250 billion cut from the defense budget. Well, I mean, I would keep going. I think we could probably do okay with $400 billion. Well, let's just start with halving it. And then we could start to have a negotiation from there as to where we go. I wouldn't hold your breath. Because at the end of the day, the Republican Party is still the Republican Party. The first thing that they passed, the first piece of legislation was to cut funding from the IRS. Now, we know this is simply fact. Because there was a lot of numbnuts out there sort of like talking about you don't want to give more money to the IRS because they audit poor people, well, I don't know what they were saying. Maybe at higher rates, they don't than higher rates, but they have, relatively speaking to millionaires over the past 10 years, relatively speaking, the rate of audits of people like getting the earned income tax credit has gone up relative to the rates of millionaires. Still, they're auditing millionaires more, but there has been an increase in which they're looking at low income people. That is directly correlated with the defunding that has taken place with the IRS over the past 10 years. Directly correlated. The more money they have, the more money they can go after the big fish. Because it's more expensive to go after the big fish, because the big fish have lawyers and accountants who make it much harder, and far more complicated finances that make it much harder to audit. But there's more money there. So the reason why the Republican Party cuts the funding of the IRS when they come into power is not because they really care about poor people.
Amazing. That needs to be said.
I mean, I feel like I don't know how much evidence you need to support that conclusion. But the reason why they do it is because they want to keep the IRS from auditing rich people. Now, it's not going to go anywhere. That bill's not going to go anywhere, but it shows you what their agenda is. Here is another example of what their agenda is going to be. This is Representative Michael Waltz, Republican from Florida. Yeah, cut defense. But let me tell you where the real money is.
Now, Congressman, should military spending cuts be on the table and put on the table by a Republican?
Well, look, I agree with Jim Jordan that we are going to carve out woke policies out of the military. We are going to look.
Pause it for 1 second. Pause it for 1 second. Wait. So the stuff that we're going to cut out of the military are going to be the woke stuff.
Yeah.
They're spending so much money on those rainbow flags and all those books about Reconstruction, where they give every single member of the military a Eric Foner anthology. Once they roll that back, we'll have some big cuts.
Yeah, I did.
Just be clear again. Now we've gone from cuts to the military to cut out the woke stuff.
They should probably take Robin DiAngelo's generalship away from her too.
Exactly. All right, but go back to the beginning here, because understand, this is the game, right? This is the game that they play. And people who buy into this game are suckers. They're suckers. Or they think you're a sucker.
Now, Congressman, should military spending cuts be on the table and put on the table by a Republican?
Well, look, I agree with Jim Jordan that we are going to carve out woke policies out of the military. We are going to look at the out-of-whack ratio of generals. I invite him to come on the Armed Services Committee and work with us on that. But Stu, and by the way, I'm all for a balanced budget. We've got to get spending under control, but we are not going to do it on the backs of our troops and our military, when at the same time we're talking about China is the greatest threat. We're going to have a select committee on China. They're tripling their nuclear arsenal. Iran is racing towards a nuke. North Korea is about to launch an ICBM. Russia is on the march. And oh, by the way, we still have a global terrorist state now in Afghanistan, thanks to Joe Biden. So this is, I mean, we can work on prioritizing defense spending, but that's really nibbling around the margins. Okay. If we really want to talk about the debt and spending, it's the entitlements program. That's 70% of our entire budget. That 1.7 trillion and defense within that is only 30%. So if we want to talk about big reforms, I look forward to hearing that from those folks who are pushing towards the balanced budget.
There are three things that constitute entitlements, so-called entitlements: Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Period. End of story. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Program that keeps 2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. Program that, at least in most states in the country, Medicaid will cover people up to $130,000 33% of poverty, make sure they get health care. Medicare, making sure that our elderly have health care and are not broke. In fact, Medicare now, as of just 2 or 3 days ago, every recipient on Medicare who requires insulin, their cost of that insulin is capped at $35 a month. And I can tell you, insulin has been far more expensive than that. I buy it for my freaking cats, and they're sadly not on Medicare. Each little tiny ball costs like $300. That's what they're coming for. And to the extent that Democrats have a tendency, in some instances, to be complicit with those calls for cutting. To the extent that it happens, it usually happened under the Obama administration in 2010. It usually happens where Republicans hold the country hostage and Democrats capitulate. Now, I don't know that they're going to do that this time. It is a different Democratic Party than it was in 2010. Different Democratic Party than it was in 2004. Not dramatically different, but different enough. And the Republicans are going to use the debt ceiling to try and cut Social Security and Medicare. And this is where people have to really pay attention and get on their representatives and on their senators and say, we're watching you, and you cannot give in to these type of hostage demands. They should have fixed this debt ceiling in December. I know that Joe Manchin, again, we had a Joe Manchin problem and whatnot. I didn't see Biden exert any effort on this, but maybe, he didn't do very well exerting effort on Joe Manchin for Build Back Better anyway, so who knows? But this is where, people are going to have to get involved and pay attention, because the Republicans, like always, are coming for your Social Security. They are coming for your retirement. They are coming for the health care that we give to seniors. They're coming for the health care that we give to people living within 133% of poverty and less. They're coming for Social Security disability. They're coming for it. That's where the money is. And they're coming for it. So pay attention to that. Someone just...
Let's get that $75 billion worth of wokeness out of the military.
Yeah, let's get that wokeness out. Leo and Manny, I am the dad. When are you coming home? This is the cat. All right, let's... I want to go through this Supreme Court case that is in front of the Supreme Court right now. Maybe we'll have somebody on eventually to talk about this in the context of other cases. And I actually think I came across somebody, and I have to check my notes, somebody on the Nation cruise, a union guy, a Teamster guy from the Northwest, who's dealing with this actual case. In fact, if it is him, we'll get him on. The dynamic in this country under the National Labor Relations Act has been that workers have a right to strike under the National Labor Relations Act. This is a federal rule. And there are instances when companies can claim that the rules protecting a worker's right to strike do not apply. That's basically what this case is ultimately about. The specifics are that you have this cement company, Glacier Northwest, and Teamsters. Teamsters are going on strike. When they went on strike, they timed it. This is allegedly. They probably did. When they had cement in the mixers. And if you know anything about cement, you got to keep it moving. Because if the mixers stop, the cement hardens. And that's why you see your cement trucks driving by and they got it spinning. So they park their trucks They left the mixers mixing, but the company, the company panicked, and they were like, they had to send people out there to essentially dump the concrete from the trucks, or the concrete hardens in the trucks, and you lose these trucks. These trucks are, incredibly expensive. But
just brick a truck.
Yeah, you're basically bricking it. But the employees made sure that they let it keep running, so it was a pain, but it wasn't. It didn't destroy the trucks. Now, there have been times where we've had something similar to this. Partially, in the past, National Labor Relations Board sided with milk truck drivers who struck, even though their strike risked spoiling the milk before it was delivered to customers. And there was a similar one with cheese. But then the National Labor Relations Board has also had some cases where they have determined that workers can't walk off the job when the result would be like extreme damage to the employer's business, or maybe hurting other people. Like a federal appeals court once ruled that if foundry workers who work with molten lead could not walk off the job and leave the lead in a state where it could melt the employer's facilities or injure workers. But there was a case, and this is all from a piece that Ian Millhiser writes. Supreme Court decision in San Diego Trades Council versus Garmin lays out a process that employers must use if they believe that their workers have timed a strike so recklessly that the union should be held liable. Right? So the panic that it set out with these, cement truck drivers, they didn't suffer massive damages. Maybe they suffered some damages, like the concrete it was wasted, and that's expensive. In nearly all cases, the employer must first obtain a ruling from the National Labor Relations Board establishing that their workers' strike was not protected by federal law. In other words, that what the workers were doing was so out of the bounds of normal striking that it was not protected. Then, once that's established, and this is under the auspices of that case from 1959, Garmin, once that is established, then the company can take the strikers to court in a state court and sue them, under tort law. But what Glacier Northwest wants is the Supreme Court to blow up that dynamic, where the National Labor Relations Board decides whether there was a right to strike or not, which would allow companies like Northwest Glacier to go and sue a union when they go and strike, regardless of whether they have a right to strike or not. And then, of course, a union getting sued, that means they have to dedicate resources to defending themselves in this suit. Now, imagine, let's say, someone like Peter Thiel, who has unlimited resources, or a guy named Howard Schultz, who has unlimited resources, owns Starbucks or is CEO of Starbucks. Imagine if they say, look, you baristas, we're going to sue you because our coffee beans, they get stale if they're not being served. Or the milk, or, by not using the espresso machine, it gets clogged up. So we're going to sue you. And there's 10 people, and they're going to get sued. And then all of a sudden, they're done. They're done. They're destroyed.
I mean, this is just how far are we stacking this deck toward employers?
That's exactly the point, is that the National Labor Relations Board exists there. You weren't the only one to phrase it that way. Felix Frankfurter, I think, made it quite clear way back when, I don't have it in my notes here, that there was an incredible that employers have the power in this dynamic. National Labor Relations Act, there's some really bad parts of it, frankly. Or not the National Labor Relations Act, but Taft-Hartley. But the National Labor Relations Board basically sits there and determines whether there's a right to strike. And if there's a right to strike, you cannot, as a union or as a striker, be sued for the implications of that strike. That's on the owners. If the board determines, I'm reading from Ian's piece, that a union's or employer's actions protected by the National Labor Relations Board under Garmin, the matter is at an end and the states are ousted of all jurisdiction. You cannot bring a tortious lawsuit in state court. However, if the board determines that the National Labor Relations Board National Labor Relations Act has nothing to say about a labor dispute, then state courts can hear that dispute and potentially order one party of the dispute to compensate the other for violations of state law. Garmin does not require the union to show that its actions were protected by the National Labor Relations Act. It only requires to show that its actions were arguably protected, and that's a low bar, and that means that it's got to go to the National Labor Relations Board before any state action can take place. But this cement company, and look, they're not doing it because of their strikes, right? I mean, they're doing it because this is how cases come before the Supreme Court. You get some right-wing organization that is plaintiff shopping. The company proposes several modifications to Garmin that would allow it to bypass the National Labor Relations Board. Its primary argument is that a union may not intentionally time a strike in order to cause damage to a company's property, but it also claims that Garmin relied on an idiosyncratic approach. I don't know what that means. One that is like too narrow or too specific. The Garmin decision was primarily rooted in the Supreme Court's belief that someone has to sort through labor disputes to determine which ones cannot be heard by state courts, and that the National Labor Relations Board, as the federal agency with the most expertise in labor management disputes, is better suited than anyone else to perform the task. Now, you heard me talk about the Chevron doctrine over and over again when this court came in. There's another case called Mistretta that is essentially similar, where the Supreme Court basically said federal judges should defer to Congress and its decision to delegate regulatory powers to a federal agency. Chevron also held that judges should ordinarily defer to those agencies when there's doubt about whether a federal law authorizes that agency to regulate. In this case, what's happening is the company wants the Supreme Court to say, we don't defer to the National Labor Relations Board. We'll just let you to go to state court. And sue the union. And if they have the right to sue the union, if the default is there is a right to sue the union, if there's any harm that comes to the business, which, of course, when you don't have anybody working for your company or your store or your mine, it's insanity. There is harm that's going to come to the business. Then you have effectively destroyed not necessarily the right for unions to strike, but their ability to strike. This is the problem with the Supreme Court being 6-3 conservative, because on top of their ability to take away an individual right that half the country had in terms of determining what happens with their own body relative to pregnancy. But they also go after things like labor, and they do everything they can to disempower labor. It would be a much better place in terms of this country if the Supreme Court did not have this power. But in the world that we live in, the Supreme Court does have this power. And so if you care about labor, if you care about workers, you must care about the federal judiciary, including, but not limited to, the Supreme Court. This is the reality of the system in which we live in. Acknowledging that, dealing with that, trying to inhibit these type of outcomes does not preclude having the belief and working towards changing that system. But this is the system that we have right now, and it's real, and it exists. And they're just going to keep doing this. They did it with Janus when they basically reversed that case of Bood, which basically said that even if you're not forced to pay dues, you got to pay the agency fees because your union, even if you're not a member of the union, is negotiating on your behalf and you're getting benefit from it. So you're going to pay for the lawyers at least who are going in there and negotiating on your behalf. They're going to keep undercutting unions. And there really is just not much that can be done. Arguably, at one point, there could be a legislative fix. But I don't, one that explicitly says there is no, there can't be any inhibiting of, I guess, a union's right to strike.
I'd be curious how other countries do that. Because that thing where, we get involved and say, no fairsies, union, you don't have the right to strike because at this moment you have too much leverage over the capitalists.
Well, it's not, that's the thing, is that you have the right to strike. They're not denying them the right to strike. They're saying you're responsible for the damages that I suffer because of your strike.
Right. Like the worker should never be responsible for those damages.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Because it effectively limits the power of the strike.
Right.
The whole point of a strike is I'm withholding my labor, something of value to you. Mm-hmm. And that value could be, you don't have the ability to sell your cookies anymore. You don't have the ability to get the cement out of the trucks. You don't have the ability to care for your milk, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's basically saying you have the right to strike. It's just that you've got to pay me and compensate me for all of my losses that are a function of your strike.
Insane.
This is, this is, like, you guys go on strike. I can't do my show, and I sue you for the members that I lose because they're like, why should I belong to the show? You're not there. And the advertising and that we lose because I'm not doing the show. I just sue you for all the revenue I would have.
Yeah. Imagine if I wanted to go on strike and Hello Tushy started signing on to court documents saying Matt needs to get.
I mean, in some ways, like that also, like maybe we can work out some type of thing. You guys strike, I sue you, I give you kickbacks. I just don't know where that original money comes from, though. That's the only problem. All right. Important case to follow. It is Glacier Northwest versus the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. So check that out. We will keep you updated. Maybe we'll have somebody on next week to talk about what we hear in the because they're doing oral arguments today. And we'll get a better sense of just like how much of a crap show this is going to be. But this is it, folks. All right. We'll talk about this garbage that we're going to hear about the classified material at Biden's place. It's going to be the fake, it's her emails again type of thing. And we will get either in the fun half or tomorrow, we'll talk about the income-driven repayment proposal. This is separate. They filed briefs the other day in the case, the Supreme Court case over student debt relief. We're not going to have a resolution for that for another like 4 or 5 months. But a separate thing is, if you have student loans, I don't know what percentage is it of people, maybe like a fourth, maybe about 25% of people who have student loans are in an existing plan that is based upon income. The Biden administration is proposing to get rid of all those plans and put it into one plan called Repay. It is, as of now, the most affordable of the 5 plans that exist, and it's going to be made more affordable. The plan is actually sort of good relative to what exists now, but as you read through the details, like you get halfway through and you're just like, oh God, dude, just forgive all the loans. Like it's just so punitive in some respects and just petty sounding. But essentially what it is, I'll just go over it now because it's important for people to know. Essentially what it is it is available for both undergraduate or graduate loans. It is not available to parents who borrowed money to pay for their children's loan. It's only for people who were the students specifically. They're calculated on your earnings and household size. So if you made if you are in the bottom 30% of earnings, or with families with earnings of less than $29,000, you will qualify for payments that are 83% lower per dollar borrowed over their lifetimes. If you are in the top 30% of earners, families with earnings exceeding $90,000, you'd see only a 5% reduction. So a single borrower with an income of $30,500 or less per year would not be required to make any monthly payments. And then after 10 years, and then after 20 years, the loan would be forgiven. If you have balances of less than $12,000, it would be 10 years and the loan's forgiven. If you are a family of household of 4 with an income below $62,400, you are not required to make any payments. And the money does not accrue interest. And if you make that amount over the course of the next 20 years, if your loaned dollar figure is greater than $12,000, it will all be forgiven. It's less than $12,000, it'll be forgiven after 10 years. More information will come, but those are the broad outlines. It's a better situation than has prior existed, but it's like complicated and petty enough where it's just like, oh my God.
Bust out Microsoft Excel.
Let's do a different system. Wipe the loans clean. We haven't collected a single payment in student loans in 3 years. The country still seems to be standing. Let's get rid of the student loan debt, and let's give and let's pay for a free option in every state, and be done with it. We're going to take a quick break.
Let it disappear the same way PPP loans did.
Yeah. Quick break. Head into the fun half. Number 646-257-3920. You can call us via the app. You can also IM us only via the app, which is now both Android and iOS. It's redone. It's beautiful. Super. Incredibly intuitive. Easiest app you've ever used. Best app for any live show that exists. Best. I don't even know if any other people have apps. Are we the only show that has an app? Oh, all right. Whatever. Who cares?
WTF has an app.
Who? It's not live. It's not a live show. Who cares about the WTF podcast app? Give me a break. Who cares? Folks, it's your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only support the free app for a live show, unlike any other app, you also get the free half free of commercials, and you get the fun half. And on the free app, as a member, you can search the entirety of the archives. It's insane. And we're tagging them all with keywords, too. At great expense. Mark Maron would never do that. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Also, don't forget, JustCoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code Majority. Get 10% off. Sign up for the AM Quickie at amquickie.com. We're gonna it's 5 days a week free now, but we're gonna shift that very shortly. So see if you like it. We got, I don't know, thousands of daily readers now. And so we're gonna charge just a little bit, basically to pay for it. Is really what it is. We're running it on a deficit for, I guess I had wild plans in 2018 or 2019, and then COVID hit, and then I don't know.
And it's well worth it. I would say,
they do a great job.
Corey do a fantastic job running down the headlines. They both have their own distinct style, I'd say, in covering the news. So
it's awesome.
It's a great read every day. Even for me, who's someone who's obviously also keeping very apprised of the headlines, it's even really helpful for me. So check it out if you guys haven't already.
Also, don't forget JustCoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code Majority. Get 10% off. Emma is back tomorrow. Yeah. And then ESVN at youtube.com/ESVN show is back on Thursday.
Yes, we will be doing a big return show for Emma. Me and her back in the studio. We'll do a large weekly roundup of everything that's gone on since we've been back in studio, as well as a preview of the wild card weekend action in the NFL. And also go check out if you haven't already Emma's solo stream from earlier this week, where she from her vacation did a stream of our running down the picks of last week, and talked about the Damar Hamlin situation. But he's seemingly doing much better. Is back in Buffalo. So youtube.com/ESVN show.
In the multi-level marketing or Matt Leck Media, what is happening there?
Matt Leck Media tonight, episode 100 of Left Reckoning. We have Brian Mayer on. It's like an Avalanche song. Brian Mayer on to talk about the sort of Jan 8, I guess. I think it was Jan 8. Was that when the thing was? And how Lula might push that to his advantage. And also we got Bhaskar Sankara on to talk about the state of the left. That's tonight. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Come join us.
Speaking of Bhaskar Sankara, we're all going to be on the 22nd, right? At the Cutting Room?
Yes, at January 22nd. This is Revolution in Left Reckoning. Give them an argument. All live with Emma Vigeland, Sam Seder, and Bhaskar Sankara. You can get your... actually, put up the... we want the Eventbrite one, actually. Go to Eventbrite, search This is Revolution or Give Them Revolution. You'll see our... tickets there, but the Cutting Room, January 22nd at Eventbrite. Look, and you can find it. Oh, there it is. There it is. Perfect. And see us all live in, a couple weeks now.
Yeah, in person. All right. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on. Fuck them.
Things I do for the bigger game plan.
By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.